All right, everyone, welcome to our live. My name's John Adolfi with the Lost World Museum, and this is my lovely wife, Christen. And we want to welcome you on this special live. This is going to be a little bit of part rant, part instruction, and perhaps we'll get a chance to answer a few of your questions. Look, on our channel, we have received an awful lot of feedback that's really negative. That's fine. We're glad you're here, regardless of what your reaction is. But the reaction is that there was no worldwide flood, that it's been debunked, that it just never happened.
Like you're a complete idiot for even thinking it could possibly be true.
And the other thing is that maybe because I'm one of the few that is sharing it, it's as if, this is a unique thought on my part, and it's dumb. And it's just very interesting to see that. Well, we want to talk a little bit about, was there a worldwide flood or was there? That's the question. Now, I'm not going to say that this is proof. I'm going to let you decide whether whatever we have to say in this short period of time constitutes proof or not. Okay? So let's start by stating that the primary source for the worldwide flood is the book of Genesis, chapters 6 and 7, and that's written by Moses. It's also endorsed by the Apostle Peter and Jesus and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who record what Jesus said about it. Jesus talked about the worldwide flood as if it was a real event. He also talked about Adam and Eve as if they were real people. So you've got Moses, who is the former commander of the Egyptian army, who wrote this. Nobody disagrees with him and all the prophets and kings and whatnot. And then Christ comes on, then the 12 apostles, several of them wrote books. And then, thank you very much, Dre. I can't say the whole name, but thank you for the super chat. I think that's what it is, or a super something or other. Thank you. So there's a line of people from 1455 BC, Moses, all the way up to the early part of the first century, 1500 years, and they talk about the same event as if it happened. So fast forward another 2,000 years later, and just because 200 years ago the geologist decided, Charles Lyell, thank you Charles Lyell, even though he's dead and he can't hear me, for turning this around and getting rid of this idea that there was a worldwide flood. Let's take a look at a few things.
Thank you sarcastically, obviously.
Yes. Because what has happened as a result of that, and Darwin, and the colleges and media and politicians too, believe it or not, that to think outside of that is misinformation, it's stupidity, it's just Stone Age or goat herder information. Goat herder. Okay, I'm going to start with first a book that I'm finding very interesting. Now, I know this is in reverse vision, and this is called Echoes of Ararat. And thank you, Dre. Appreciate the second vote of confidence. Echoes of Ararat. Mount Ararat is the mountain or mountain range that the Noah's Ark landed, according to Genesis. And it is the one place that everyone seems to point to where Noah's Ark either has been seen or portions of what appears to be Ark wood have been taken from. Now, in this book, there's a collection of over 300 flood legends collected from North and South America. I understand that there's at least 500 legends throughout the world, but 300 of those, and 100 of those 300 come from Native Americans here in the United States.
And I know a lot of you don't read anymore. I'm guilty of not reading as much as I used to too. But it's well worth your time to get a book like this and at least skim it and be impressed with the magnitude, the sheer volume of these things and the similarities between them. It's very convincing to see that it's not just It's not just the Bible or a couple harebrained Christians that want to believe in this. It is all over the world. There's a traumatic memory in the cultures, in the mindset of many, many different people around the world. It lingers on. It was big enough in each of those situations, each of those cultures, to have been passed on, and after all this time to still have a remnant there. So that in itself says a lot.
Now, what people are saying that the flood is, because, all the fossils and everything had to have, for the most part, had to have water involved in it, had to be buried in a slurry of water and mud in order to be fossilized. And, there's a lot of fossils. I mean, they figure they're in the trillions throughout the world. They say that there were local floods. So anything from seeing fossils, local flood, or it was a sea at one time, okay? Even though it may be on top of a mountain, because it was uplift that brought that up there. I got it. Or the legends that talk about a worldwide or a flood or whatever, they're just saying it's local. That's a reason why you see 500 indigenous people throughout the world talk about the flood. It's local flooding. We thought about that some, and we have some questions about that. But let me read from you out of this book 3 excerpts from North America and Mexico. And this is what the indigenous people, now these were collected from the 1500s to the early 1900s. These were people that were, the people that first got there, or at least the first that got there that chronicled their legends, the Native American legends.
Before you continue,
Yeah.
Robert's asking, is there going to be another visit to try and find the Ark this year? And it depends on the snowpack, the meltback, the weather conditions. They want to, and I'm sure some will try anyway, but those that we follow and trust and like the most, it depends on the area of the mountain that he wants to get to.
And we'll report on that as it comes to us. And then they allow us to release the information of any expeditions that have taken place on Ararat. But typically, we have to report on it after the fact, and sometimes usually a little bit after the fact, because it's still quite sensitive over there. All right, let me read to you the Havasupia people. Never heard of them. They are Native Americans, and this is how their flood legend goes. He says that they sat down and waited the destruction of the world. It was not long before the floods began to descend. So now they're talking about after the flood was over with. Not rain. Oh, excuse me. It was not long before the floods began to descend. Talking about the rain. Forgive me. Not rain, but cataracts. Rivers, deluges came, making more noise than 1,000, and there's a Native American word for the Colorado River, 1,000 times louder than the Colorado River, and covering all the earth with water. Every single one of these chronicled legends that have been captured talk about not just a localized flood, but the entire world and everybody else getting wiped out. Here's another one from Wyoming. These are the Cheyenne people. While they were traveling southward, there came a great rain and flood all over the country. The rivers rose and overflowed, and still the rain kept falling. At last, the high hills alone could be discerned. Let's stop right there. There's one more I want to read, but I want to stop right there. The high hills were barely discernible. What does that mean? Let's take a look. What are some of the causes of flooding?
Well, I mean, rivers. Somebody might say, in those cultures and things getting passed on, maybe let's just say there was a tsunami and it just swept up the sides, of the mountains. Like the Boxing Day tsunami, that went up like 90 feet up the mountainside. So, something like that could, through repeated discussion through the years, or the things get changed through the years. So maybe you could call that even, a flood.
Right. So a tsunami is one type of flood. Okay. A lot of rain, a broken dam, which you're not going to, but let's just say there was a ford or something that broke, but how long does that last? Usually it lasts pretty quick, and then that's it. and then the floodwaters go away. This is floodwaters that these indigenous people, and who's going to tell these people that they're wrong? Who's going to go around the world and tell 500 different indigenous people groups of people that their idea, their legend about a worldwide flood that wiped out everybody because of man's insubordination is actually a myth, a legend, and you're an idiot? Because this is what they say when I repeat it. Well, who's going to go tell the Cheyenne that they're an idiot for chronicling this?
Yes, let's just clarify. Yeah, they didn't. What happened is, you're right. Noah and his family have this in their in their memories. As the people multiplied and spread out, especially after the Tower of Babel, and the languages got confused, you have minor changes through the years to the story, and it got passed down through people after people after people till you've got these modern day stories. So yeah, you're right. It's this is Naj J Don. Yeah, they didn't win it. They just passed it on.
Exactly.
Through the many centuries.
Now, obviously, if you've got 100 million, 500 million, a billion people that got wiped out all in one fell swoop within a year time through a worldwide flood, that would be it'd be embellished in everybody's mind and would pass that on for centuries.
Because you got to remember, it has to be a pretty big event to get passed on for a significant period of time. I mean, you think about the Johnstown? Is that the name of it?
Johnstown in the
Pennsylvania,
1800s. Yeah.
In the 1800s. That's still kicking around. People still, have memories of that. And,
it was a dam that broke, right?
Yeah. And that's even with the modern, chronicling and stuff we've got. For something to have been passed on for many, 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 many centuries, for all that time, it can't be just like a little, the river flooded in Binghamton like it did, a couple years ago. You can't have just like a small event travel its way down through the many centuries. It's got to be something really significant.
Now, according to Genesis, the timeline for this was an entire year, 371 days. So we were just musing over this. How do you flood an area? I mean, let's just say that there's a source of water that's creating a flood situation, okay? Have you ever seen an entire valley flooded 100 feet deep? That it starts to creep up the sides of the canyon or the mountain? What's the deepest we've ever seen a flood? Okay, now granted, all you need is about 10 feet of water, tsunami 10 feet, and you're going to wipe out and kill people if they're in the way. That's true. But over the course of time, raining, cataracts, everything's overflowing. Sounds like a progressive thing. And when it's progressive like that, and it's claiming to be the whole world, we were thinking about Mount Ampersand in the Adirondacks. It's 1,700 feet to the top. I've tried to run it, takes me almost an hour to get to the top of the summit. At that place, what does it look like when you're up there?
It's stunning because you see all these big mountains around you and you feel how high up you are. And it would be mind-boggling. Ampersand is not even one of the 46 high peaks, okay? So it's not as tall as many of them up there. And yet, if you've ever stood on, even just a small one like that, and look down over the deep valley around you and imagine the volume of water it would take to cover even halfway up it's just an obscene amount of water.
So what does it take to cover a 14 or 1,700 foot mountain? 1,400 feet. Where do you get that kind of water? Now, people have asked that about the worldwide flood. Where do you get that water? And that water some of it was in the atmosphere. I'm not talking about rain. I'm talking about half of the water ever created was in the atmosphere as a protective cover. The rest of it was in the ground, and there may have been some shallow seas. The geologists, hydrologists believe that maybe the highest mountain at the time of the flood was around 8,000 feet.
So there were no giant Mount Everest and types of mountains like that. That's something post-flood from the...
But when you get up into a mountain that's 3,000, 2,000, and you look down into the valley, how much volume of water has to create a situation as the indigenous people Now this is Mount Rainier, but there was no mountains. But just think about it for a second. How much water is necessary to fill up the valley, to fill up the Grand Canyon, and then to spill over to the point to where people are climbing and going up the hills? The Native Americans talked about going up the hills or the mesa or the mountain, or to get into a canoe or a raft to get away from all the water that was inundating the earth. Think about that.
So it's really easy to just arrogantly dismiss out of hand, oh, there was no flood. That's been proved wrong and stuff. Well, here's your homework assignment. Drive around the countryside and look at your local creeks and rivers and the rolling, just even the small mountains and small little rolling hills, and ask yourself how much water, what kind of cataclysm, what would it take to get that water level up just even to cover the rolling hills around the rivers that you guys have near you? It'll boggle your mind.
So I contend, based on the evidence of Scripture, based on what 500 indigenous people throughout the world have said, cultures exactly throughout the world, that it was global and that it wiped out the world. For them, almost all of their legends state that. And the fact that a local flood doesn't answer the question satisfactorily. I want to share with you a resource before we end our live here, and that is this book right here. I love this book. I've learned so much from this book. It's called In Search of Noah's Ark. You can get it on Amazon. It's like a couple of dollars plus shipping. It's a great, fun, and interesting read, and I highly recommend it. In Search of Noah's Ark. Take a screenshot of that and go look it up and grab yourself a copy. Christen, could you go ahead and show them the text? Now, those of you who want to get chummy with us and want to take it to the next level, that's how you can do it. Text us at 315-509-9075. And if anybody wants to throw that up in the comments section, just so we can get it in the comments right there, I appreciate it. This is nothing weird about this. It's only good for the United States and Canada, and it's free. And just text me and say, hey, John, and I'll say, hey, Bob, welcome to the text group. 259 people got texted just before we went on live here on Facebook. So if that's the kind of thing that you would, service.
So you don't get bombarded all the time. You just get alerted if he's going to go live.
There, Walter right there. Walter is one of you'll see him right there in the comments. Walter with the thumbs up. He's in that text group. So that's why he's here right now. All right, very good. Well, thank you for joining us. And again, just to recap, we believe that there was a worldwide flood, that the local floods that evolution or geologists use to try to explain the different people groups throughout the world's flood legends, or the evidence we see in the fossil record, for us, it just doesn't cut it. It makes more sense that it was a global event that took place 4,400 years ago, just like Moses said in the book of Genesis. I'm John, and this is Christen. We're the Lost World Museum, where we asked a provocative and important question: where did we come from? Apes, aliens, or Adam? And we'll see you on the next video or the next live very, very soon. Have a good night or day. Take care.